Hello everyone. I'm going to be using videos from my travel in the Czech Republic. I did a study abroad this year, and I am super excited to share with you some of the videos and pictures that I took while I was here. I have never been able to forget that I'm black. There are times when it may slip my mind, when the friends I'm hanging with are a pretty mixed group, when we're in liberal areas, when I'm alone. But even in the states, which have long lauded multiculturalism as one of its defining features, I often feel like an outsider. This, of course, is not just about race. Being gay has an inherent aspect of isolation to it. But in recent years, more attention has gone towards the struggles that black people face, particularly in the United States, where police violence is rampant and almost normalized, racism in medicine has left black women with the highest levels of maternal mortality, and most recently, I have noticed a frustrating overlap of trans rights activists using our struggles and slogans to legitimize their own movement. Let me make this clear. We are not the same. Racism has been a part of the American lifestyle since the founding of the states. America was built on stolen land with stolen labor. Its crops were watered with blood. Its legacy lives on, both personally and systematically. My mom's grandmother died before my mom got married, but my mom assures me that it was for the best. She was terrified of white people after learning one of her brothers got hanged. Her surviving brother had never learned to read due to the lack of schooling and died illiterate. My mom remembers living in an area that I work in now that used to be a sundown town. She recalls being warned to leave, remembers going to high school and seeing skinheads on the streets, remembers the women locking car doors as she crossed the street until it all became background noise. There's still a sign in someone's yard asking passerby to help identify who dragged their son into the street and burned him in the 70s. My mom ignores certain slights because if it's not threatening violence or actual slurs, she doesn't really notice racism anymore. The stuff that leaves me uncomfortable for days is something that she readily sees past. And of course, there's a systemic racism that has inundated every aspect of our lives. Perhaps one of the most impactful is its influence on the medical field. Black people were 3.57 times more likely to die from COVID-19 than white people. Black people have a lower average life expectancy than white people. Racism itself causes a higher strain on mental health. Black women also faced higher risks during pregnancy and are 3 to 4 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related causes than white people in the US, in addition to higher rates of infant mortality. White medical students still treat us as subhuman. A 2016 study found many white medical students wrongly believe black people have a higher pain tolerance than white people do. Of all the participants, 73% held at least one false belief about the biological differences between races, such as black people having thicker skin, less sensitive nerve endings, or stronger immune systems. These are the same beliefs used to justify medical experimentation and maltreatment of slaves in the 19th century. The same lies used to dehumanize us then are still being used now to justify medical mistreatment. Even worse, this dehumanization is being continued by the trans rights movement as they use black people as pawns in their arguments to justify ignoring the realities of biological sex. Black women are implicitly treated as not being women, or lesser women, as we are often compared to trans women, as in males, to illustrate why they are somehow female. Look at how masculine black women look. Look at how manly they are, and yet they count as women. By suggesting that women of color, because it's not just black women either, are lesser women because of our natural features is blatant racism. And I suppose it's well-meaning, but that doesn't negate that comparing actual women, women who have historically been treated as lesser than, like freaks, medical experiments, and oddities, dehumanizes us. Misogynoir is defined as misogyny directed towards black women where race and gender both play roles in bias. The term was coined by black feminist Moya Bailey in 2010 to address misogyny directed towards black women in American visual and popular culture. It refers to the way we are often treated as lesser than as a result of being both black and female, both groups that have been historically subjugated in face of specific violence. In addition to the way that the healthcare system overlooks black women, we must also note that black women are the most likely demographic to be murdered by male partners. And just when the public was beginning to pay attention to us, to protest beside us, and to remember the names of those of us who were murdered, the trans right movement steals our slogans and compares us to men, all in the name of uplifting a primarily middle-class, white male demographic who they claim to be the most oppressed of all. Black girl magic became trans girl magic. Passing now refers to if someone can tell a trans person's sex. Walking while black is now walking while trans. Intersectionality was originally meant to refer to black women's struggles based on the intersection of race and gender, but is now being used to justify why men should be not even included, but centered in feminism. The trans rights movement is a parasite that likes to latch onto the momentum and legitimacy of other groups, and meanwhile offers the same regressive and bigoted rhetoric we attempt to fight against, rebranded as liberalism and postmodernist social justice. Meanwhile, the trans community is full of self-pronounced reform Nazis, and even the most well-meaning of them repeat rhetoric that is blatantly racist and homophobic. This diverts attention from issues that plague black women and prevents us from speaking about them without being reminded and reprimanded for the potential offense we may cause to trans-identified men. Often, white trans-identified men, as in the class that oppresses us both on an axis of race and sex. As a lesbian, a black lesbian furthermore, I am fully aware of the homophobia that is rampant in the community. For many allies, the colonization of gay spaces is of no concern to them, and as such, the rising numbers of those who identify as part of the LGBT community seem little more than an indicator of a more tolerant society. That is, until you look deeper. While a large part of Generation Z and millennials identify as LGBT, the expanded definition, which seems to position any type of relationship outside of the cultural norm as being inherently queer, and therefore gay, actually allows a large number of straight people to identify into what is now seen as a trendy form of accessible oppression. In a world where being a white cis straight male or white cis straight female is positioned to being the greatest devil of our society, being able to opt into a community that is no longer allowed the rigid boundaries of strict definition is an easy way out of scrutiny. The rise of queer as a definition facilitates this, as one is not allowed to question anyone's identity for fear of gatekeeping or being exclusionist. Meanwhile, queer is a vague definitionless word that means nothing but the slur originally was: weird, strange. This stems from the understanding that gay sex is strange and weird, and therefore anything that is strange and weird is gay. This is a false equivalency. Homosexuality is a normal variation of life and occurs in various other species. Interesting, then, how transgenderism does not. These heterosexuals who claim to be part of the community now speak for the rest of us, and when critiqued, we are called bigoted, exclusionary, and somehow homophobic for calling out what is actually homophobic behavior. Funny how white people understand why they cannot lead black liberation movements, but straight people do not understand why they cannot lead gay liberation movements. More so, they don't care about the effects of this colonizing behavior because it does not affect them. They can support trans rhetoric, which pressures lesbians and gay men to sleep with people they aren't attracted to via conversion therapy tactics. They are fine with decimating our spaces and communities, adding to the stigmatization and loneliness that actual homosexuals feel. And they will not have to face alienation for speaking out about their own experiences, nor will they have to follow through on their words of support. Instead, they can hide behind trans allyship in order to hide their homophobia as they gleefully call homosexuality a genital preference and suggest we show our fealty through offering validation through sex. Feminism has all but been destroyed by the sex positivity and lib-fem movements, but any attempts to fight back have only resulted in women being further demonized. It seems that the concept of inclusion intersectionality, which was originally meant to include the specific struggles that black and disabled women face as a result of the intersection of their identities, has instead been used to dismantle the feminist movement. With the widening of the definition of women to now include anyone who feels like one, often connected to the stereotypes associated with womanhood instead of the biological reality which is our only connecting factor, feminism has been broadened to include men, thus destroying the movement. In the name of inclusion, we must now deny that misogyny exists and position any woman who questions the erosion of sex-based protections and rights as a TERF. The safety and rights of women are placed as second chair to the feelings of trans-identified males. Not trans-identified females, of course. Even they are often overlooked and sidelined in their own movement. As a result, many heterosexual men have taken advantage of self-ID laws and well-intentioned inclusivity for their own gain. Women are being forced out of groups, academia, the workforce, not to mention that when we speak up about these topics, we're told to shut up, fall in line, or else be ostracized or even fired from our jobs. As Ninochka Ruska said, if your intersectionality is not women-centered, it's not feminism. And this is no longer feminism. Even the slogans we once used are being bastardized to decenter women. Women's rights are human rights has become trans rights are human rights. The future is female is now the future is trans. Perhaps, worse still, is that woman itself has been stolen from us. Meanwhile, men can still be referred to as men, as fathers, and as people. And perhaps the most appalling of all, the trans community is inherently ableist and uses conflation with disability to further prove the necessity of transitioning. By medically transitioning, trans people induce a disability in themselves and become lifelong patients, sucking up medical resources which would otherwise go to people who can't help their disabilities. Undergoing cosmetic, albeit extremely invasive, life-affirming surgery or complication correction further implies that the pain they choose to suffer is a validation of their identity. Pain is literally a part of the trans spiritual identity. The more pain you go through, the more valid you are. The trans experience makes a performance out of pain, a drag show of self-affliction. Every slogan, every battle, every tactic they choose has been stolen from another cause and used to further their own ends. And yet, the moment you try to call out their racism, homophobia, misogyny, or ableism, you are the one in the wrong, because to be transphobic is the greatest crime of all. To question the ideology built on affirming everyone, on standing for everything while defining nothing, is akin to heresy. And we all know what they do to heretics. This, dear viewers, is where we part. I do apologize for the bump in the posting schedule. Like I said, I have been traveling abroad for the past month. I've still got about another week and a half in Europe before I head home. And it has been remarkably difficult to get content out on a regular basis while juggling classes. In addition, I've decided to look into moving to Europe. I really do enjoy, just in general, the differences in culture. And I think that teaching English will be a very nice way to broaden the gap year between when I graduate undergrad, between when I go to grad school. I am currently working on a series of interviews with other women in the community. If you are a woman, a feminist, a lesbian, same-sex attracted, whatever, what have you, I want to talk to you. I would love to have conversations with women who have lived this life a lot longer than I have, because I know that I'm certainly missing certain experiences. And of course, I love hearing other perspectives. Even if you hate me, even if you disagree with me, I'd still love to talk with you. If you have any questions, concerns, or comments, leave them in the comments down below, and I'll see you next time.